welcome to the incredible Bigfoot 4.
Oh man, there must have been about 8, maybe 9. There must be one that watches out for the family, like a scout.
Do you think they're fully human type beings, or do you think they're interdimensional?
I think they were bred for work.
You think they were bred for work? Some of the highlights I have put together for you in this show are first, and we'll get to it right away, is a crystal clear recording of a mighty Bigfoot yelling in Vancouver Island. Their local radio station also broadcast audio that they had recorded. Something I hear a lot from skeptics is, if it was really true, somebody would have got a bone or a skeleton or some physical proof. Well, my Blackfeet friend Hiram Upham did, and I am going to show you the video of the juvenile leg that his dog drug in. I also have separate witnesses recorded independently without corroboration that told me the same story of a Sasquatch-like creature killing 2 members of their Blackfeet tribe. I have now interviewed on camera, face to face, 39 people who claim to have seen Bigfoot with their own eyes. Now, I did include Steve, who recorded the Sasquatch yelling in that number of 39, but the rest were visual. I am both owner and cashier at a large store that serves over 1,000 people on a busy day, so I talk to people from all over the USA and Canada, and you might be curious where these accounts came from. About a half a dozen came from each Washington, Oregon, Northern California, and Montana. About 4 or 5 came from British Columbia and Vancouver Island. About 3 came from Utah, 3 came from Florida, about 2 from Idaho and Colorado, and 1 from Alabama and 1 from Georgia. This little map I have up shows how many confirmed sightings each state has experienced. One of the people telling you of a sighting is my buddy Al, that I've known for 30 years and who was with me when I shot this buck, so enjoy. You might remember in Incredible Bigfoot 2 that I had a Huey helicopter pilot that does the logging that saw a Sasquatch go across a clear cut for 400 to 500 yards. And now this guy has these insanely realistic sounds of the Sasquatch on Vancouver Island.
Hi, my name is Steve. I'm from Vancouver Island, Canada, just off the coast of Vancouver, British Columbia, and encountered these strange noises about 3 times. I'm sure they'll be uploaded to the YouTube channel, but it was probably one of the most hair-lifting experiences I've ever had. Like, I got goosebumps right now just talking about it.
Oh man, dude, I heard them, and it's so realistic. It's coming from a cavernous animal that is just the way that people have described them sounding, but I've never actually heard that realistic recording.
No, and I didn't know what it was. I've hunted all throughout the island, all throughout British Columbia. I've heard wolves, I've heard coyote, I've heard everything. Nothing like this. Goosebumps are happening right now as we speak, so it's pretty incredible.
Fasten your seatbelt, everybody, because here it is.
Yeah, and another thing too, it wasn't only me that heard it. One of the guys on the radio station broadcasted it the next morning. Said I heard this strange sound, so I actually got a hold of him, contacted him, let him listen to the sound, and he nailed it. The same thing. Like, the guy went white because of the sound. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Now tell us what your dog did.
My dog, it was a German short-haired pointer. He's a hunting dog, and he's trained to, do what he needs to do to hunt. But as soon as he heard the noise, he came back to a heel, sat down beside me, and he was freaked out.
He was freaked out.
He was freaked right out.
Now, what line of work are you in? Is this your woodworking company?
Well, actually, no, I'm a teacher.
Oh, you're a teacher?
Yeah, at a high school there, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
It might interest you to know that a biology teacher in our area has me come in and talk about this to his students.
Okay.
This gal, this native gal, said that she saw a whole family of them in an area that she did not know was a Bigfoot hotspot. All right, well, I'm just wondering if there's anybody that has actually watched one of my shows, and if you can share about something that you enjoyed on it.
I've watched a lot of your music videos. They're all really fun. And I actually loved your book.
If any of y'all are interested in my book, it's on Amazon for $7. The Wild and Crazy Buddy Willows. And this guy's having me sign his unicorn.
Is it there? Is it not? Who knows? You know, it comes from here, Sasquatch.
Yeah.
It's got to be there.
I've had a lot of people describe it to me, but that's the first time I've ever heard it clearly. And that's just what people describe to me. It's giving me goosebumps now. And thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share this with your friends. And rejoice with us in the recent birth of our son, Danny James. All these years I've been searching for Bigfoot and finally found him. Look at those big feet. Wow. We went on this hunting trip a few weeks ago. We are hunting with my Native American friend who's like a brother, Al Moran. First deer sightings. Those are antelope. Al, would you mind telling me about that time you and Debbie saw the Bigfoot, or Debbie saw it and you went tracking it?
Yeah, we were over in Columbia Falls at Middle Lakes Golf Course. We were golfing and I'm taking a shot and Debbie hollers at me and says, "Hey, look!" And I get up, I didn't get to see him, I seen the back. There was this big thing walking across the golf course, upright, swinging his arms.
You didn't get a glimpse of it?
I didn't get a really good glimpse of it. It dropped right down the creek as soon as I seen it. I just seen kind of the top half of it as he dropped down that creek. I went over later and I found those big tracks back down in there.
How much later?
Oh, probably about 20 minutes later.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had to make my shot with my golfing.
And about how long were the tracks?
Oh, they were probably 18 inches or a little bit more. They were pretty good size.
Wow, that's really good size. Did Debbie say how tall it was?
No, she didn't say how tall it was. She was still kind of amazed at what she seen.
Yeah. Last time you told me it, you said that there was still a little mud rising from the track.
Yeah.
The freshness of it.
Yeah, it was pretty fresh.
Wow. How close from the lodge, the Meadow Lake Lodge there?
Oh, it was back on one of the back courses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Back stretch.
There was not all that stuff back there. Not much of a lodge there.
Yeah.
Back in those days, it was only a 9-hole course.
Oh, okay. You know, Al, that's when I first started taking this seriously, is when you told me you saw that, because I kind of thought it was a hoax. In all my hunting and hiking, I'd never seen one or never seen a track, so I wasn't much of a believer, but I knew that you wouldn't make something up. Al grew up hunting to survive on the reservation. It appears to me that the vortex for the species is in the northwest. But this show, it just happened to work out that there was a lot of stories from the Southland. So this is Billy from Eastern Alabama, and he had some incidents that he'd like to tell us about as well.
Okay. According to BFRO, there have been sightings in our area, but my wife and I, this was back way before we were ever married. We were on a dirt road one night, and we had parked on this dirt road, and we heard some grunting in the woods, and I looked.
Were you parked making out?
Yeah, we were parked making out.
Okay, see, I know what's going on.
Yeah, so we heard noise and grunting, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and something stepped out of the woods behind our car.
Wow.
And so, of course, we floored it and got out of there. We never stuck around to see what it was. The other event that I had, I was actually driving a church bus load of, well, I say a bus load, it was a van of teenagers home one night. And we had, the only thing that I could even describe it as would be a large chimpanzee cross the road in front of us. And
how large?
Well, it definitely was not a bear. It definitely was not a deer. It was not a dog. It was fairly large. So it crossed right in front of us, and I saw where it went into the woods. Well, the next day I went to that area and I measured, because I saw when it went into the woods, the height of its legs to its back, because it was on all fours.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. And where it went into the woods, I measured at 48 inches. And
The height of its legs.
Yes.
Did it stand up at any point?
No, it never stood up.
Interesting.
It
So
came
the skunk ape may be a little bit more like a gorilla in terms of moving along like a silverback.
Yeah, I mean, it came across the road so fast, and all these kids are screaming. They see it come across the road in front of us. Yeah.
What did they think it was?
Well, one of the kids, he said, I think that was a Bigfoot.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, it was.
Now,
it was
Billy
pretty
here,
cool.
he's a football referee and played a lot of football himself, so it sounds like maybe you're a believer too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
see, that's partly what makes me believe is I've interviewed some rock-solid Christian people that said we saw Bigfoot.
And I'm a pastor.
You are? Wow.
I'm a pastor, and so, you know, I've definitely had encounters.
That's something else.
And, you know, I don't doubt it for a minute.
That is something else. Was there anything else you'd like to add?
No, those are the main sightings I've had. I've heard tree knocks in our that same area where it crossed the road in front of us. In that same area, we've heard tree knocks.
Now, what is a tree knock like? I've heard of that.
Well, it was basically like somebody taking a stick or almost like a ball bat and smacking a tree. And so I had a dog in my yard just going crazy one night. And so I stepped out on my back deck to see what the dog was barking at. And he was facing the woods. And while I stood out there on the deck, I heard the smack against the tree. And I thought, okay, I think I might know what that is. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, we did a recon of a Blackfeet lady that said she saw a whole family of them in the Kiowa Camp region. And we found a very curious lodgepole tree broken off at about 7.5 feet.
That's either a moose or like a huge humanoid.
It wasn't wind. There was no marks like a moose or an elk. And then I had an old boy tell me about a Bigfoot experience they had. He was the guy that hired guys to do roads over in Oregon. And in a very remote region, the guy he'd hired was up there starting to survey the road. And a Bigfoot came out of the forest, reached into his service van, and grabbed a bag of oranges and stood right there and ate all of them without peeling them. And also around that area, there was a lot of broken trees that he was marking his territory with. It's on my YouTube, by the way, under Orange Stealing Bigfoot. The guy, by the way, was pulled into the office after he made 18 casts and said, you know, it's fine, you made the cast and everything. We're going to send them to universities. But none of you guys can say a word about this or you could lose your job. So he didn't. But when he retired, he saw my show and he gave me the whole report. So did you ever see or hear about broken off?
I've heard about it, and I've actually I've spent a lot of time in the woods as a hunter myself.
Yeah.
And you know, there have been things that I've seen that I'm like, that's not natural.
Yeah,
you know?
like what?
Well, just trees bent over and twisted. You know, just stuff that where I live, there's not a lot of snowfall, so it's not really, you know, that trees have been blown over by snow or things like that, but just trees bent over and, you know, twisted in unnatural ways together.
Interesting.
So I've seen some of that, but
now, is this the little gal you were making out with when you heard the Bigfoot grunting in the forest?
That is. That's my wife. And we talked about that recently, and she said, yeah, well, I don't know what that was behind us, but there was definitely something behind us. But
now, what do you think it might have been?
I have no idea. I was ready to get out of there, though.
That's interesting.
But, you know, I believe in a lot of the sightings and stuff that's been, you know, that has happened down in our area.
Well,
in
what
Alabama.
about that night that it crossed in front of us? You actually saw something.
Right. A little bit prior to them, I was taking a group of teenagers home in my truck.
So he was driving the bus and you were driving the truck?
Yes, I was driving the truck,
Okay.
and I was a little bit ahead of him.
And this was the same road,
Yes.
but it was probably a half mile away, and she
Right.
was there earlier.
Wow.
So
Right.
go ahead and tell them what
well,
you saw.
I mean, I couldn't explain it. It was very large.
And it squatted on
it
the
was
side of the road.
squatted on the side of the road. And it got away so quick.
How
before
large?
we
Like
could turn
bigger
around.
than him?
Oh yeah, much bigger than him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something else.
Yeah.
So Alabama, you know, this is my first interview of a testimony from Alabama. I've gotten them from Tallahassee, Oklahoma. I've had one from Florida, but this is my first Alabama.
Well, we definitely know that we have them there.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's really interesting. Well, thank you both so much for sharing, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
My friend Billy here, he was talking about that as a pastor or as a Christian, he gets this, well, like you're a pastor and you believe in Bigfoot. But let me tell you, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And the truth about things comes out when you connect with him. And there's a lot of believers, too, that are realizing the truth of Bigfoot.
Just like I know what Jesus has done in my life, I know Bigfoot. I've had the experiences, I've seen him. And
You were about to tell me about that rock
yeah,
throwing
so the
incident.
rock throwing incident, our neighborhood, basically it was like a road making a square back into the woods, and there were probably at the time maybe 20 houses around this neighborhood. There were at least a dozen of us in that neighborhood.
Kids out playing.
Kids, adults even had experienced the rock throwing events.
Yeah.
And it was just always crazy. The first time we experienced it, a friend and I were just kind of up in the woods behind the house.
Hey, I'll be right with you.
And we had rocks coming from a couple of different directions. We could move and the rocks would follow us.
Yeah.
They'd never hit us, but it was always just like, okay, who's throwing these rocks? And
Yeah.
we never found the source of those rocks.
In the 29 now interviews of Bigfoot testimonies that I've done, there have been probably 5 that mentioned the rock throwing, and nobody was ever injured, but it was like, hey, get out of my territory.
You know, and I don't know that it was a get out of my territory as much as it was.
How can I help you today?
I was gonna get a special.
It was more just like, I'm
Yeah.
messing with you. I'm just messing with you.
And what's your first name?
My name's Jeff.
Jeff. All right, so just as Billy's finishing up his story, Jeff walks in and he's had a story as well. I've never had a situation like this where I've had 2 people that had a story within a 20-minute period of time, but Jeff's going to tell you about his incident.
So, this is about spring of 1980 when I was 12 and my buddy Andy, we were 6th grade, almost going into 7th. So we were in the Boy Scouts. We were like the tenderfeet. So our Boy Scout troop, and there was about 8 of us with a scoutmaster. And I'm from Auburn, Washington. So we went up with that troop that was centered around, I forgot the name of the troop. But mostly guys from Auburn and then Kent. So we went up for a weekend about this time of year, about the end of April. So we went up past Highway 410 out of Enumclaw, going east, past Greenwater Campground. And I'm familiar with my family. I've always camped there since I was a little tiny kid. So we went up to Huckleberry Creek. And we set up Camp 1 Huckleberry Creek.
Ooh, I like that name.
Yeah. And Andy and I are the 2 youngest guys. So the other guys are kind of older to mess with. They're 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And, make us do all the work. And we go, let's get away from these guys. So I have a dog with me, too. About this time. So we hiked up up this hillside, and there was a clear cut. And then we sat on a stump, and we looked down at those guys along the river. And we had our soda pops with us in our Boy Scout knapsacks. And it's kind of like looking, and he's here, my dog's in there with us. So we looked up this clear cut. At the end of the clear cut, there's a tree line, and all of a sudden I saw an evergreen being shaken back and forth. It was pretty good size, not like a real giant one, but it's big enough where a man couldn't do
Was
that.
it like 16 feet tall?
Oh, this thing?
No, the evergreen.
Evergreen? No, it was probably about 20 or more feet.
Wow.
And it looked like it might have been about that big around. But it was
my
being shaken,
gosh.
and I heard a noise to me, and I think I've been to the zoo at that point in my life, so I knew what a gorilla sounded like
Yeah.
like an ape.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it. We saw it shaking, and we just got the hell out. We screamed, we just ran down over the deadfall you know, like crazy, falling down, back to the camp. And I told my scoutmaster, I go, I think we saw a Bigfoot. He goes, no, you guys probably saw a bear. I go, no, it wasn't that.
Definitely not a bear.
Yeah, and nobody believed us, and the older guys were laughing at us and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, and my buddy Andy, who lives out, retired cop out in Auburn, Washington.
You guys probably talk about it to this day if you see
Yeah.
each other, huh?
Yeah,
Because people that have an experience, they don't ever forget it.
right?
No, there's
never forget.
definitely no forgetting, and you know, and other people that always look at you skeptical and don't believe you. But from what I found is those who have had experiences and have seen them, they know,
Yeah.
and that's all you can say is, yeah, I know, I believe, absolutely. And it's not even one of those things where, you know, I think this happened. No, I know it happened. I was there. I saw it. And there are things about it I don't fully understand, but are they real? You can't convince me they're not.
Now, you look like you're a veteran.
Yeah, I retired out of the Montana National Guard about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I was an OCS cadre down in Helen. This is my last class.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story.
They can go up.
That's awesome.
With virtually every credible sighting I've had, I've done research and found that there were other sightings in that same time frame in the same area.
Yeah, there's been other sightings in that area. There's been people in that area along Highway 410 to Greenwater, campground area, and Huckleberry Creek, White River area that have also had experiences with Bigfoot.
Thanks.
Yeah.
He said they had their Boy Scout backpacks on and they were running and falling over trees and their mess kit going crazy and everything. Well, we're kind of becoming a hub for the Bigfoot information and belief. And this morning I found it curious that there was a couple of marks that looked like Bigfoot prints on my floor here. Doesn't that look like a Bigfoot print? I'm sure it's probably just somebody probably dropped a rag or something. Well, I found a nice raven feather and I put it in my cap, and now the birds are coming to be my friend. Hey everybody, I'm here with Clayton, and at one time I was traveling around doing baseball, and I traveled to Pitcher Creek, and our team actually, I think we won that tournament, either won or second place, and there was a great big guy from Lethbridge that was about 6'1" in 12-year-old All-Stars. And we had to beat those guys. But Clayton here, he had a Bigfoot encounter near that place where I hit the first home run in the tournament up there in Pitcher Creek. And so Clayton's going to tell us about it here.
Yeah, we were at a middle school camp, and we had been, it was nighttime, and there was a fairly big meadow, and it's in the middle of nowhere, a place called Beaver Mines. And so it was nighttime. We went to visit the girls' side, which is, you know, quite a ways, and we had the teachers camped in the middle. They had a bonfire going.
So the teachers were there in the middle trying to keep you apart from the
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you look like a guy that could find you.
Yeah. There was a couple of us that made our way through to the girls' side. So we went to visit them and had some cigarettes with them, type thing, and you know, had some tea with them, coffee, and. So we're making our way back. We didn't stay there too long, and it was about midnight, I'd say. So coming back along the meadow, there's a meadow, and so we're walking, having our flashlights at our feet, and then out of the blue, a big rock comes flying in front of us, about the size of a bowling ball.
Wow.
You know, and so we flashed our light, rolled right in front of me and my friend. So we looked down at it and we were wondering what the heck. So we pointed it up, our flashlights up to the trees where the pine trees were. So the pine trees so high up were just moving like this, like crazy.
Wow.
And then we just looked at each other and we just dashed out of there back toward the camp.
Now when you looked up to the pine trees and they were moving, could you see any forms moving in around
No,
them?
no. It was just the trees moving, like kind of like something, you know, moving them from the inside. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't actually see the form of a Bigfoot or
No.
anything like that, but
No.
pretty sure that's what happened.
Yeah.
Well, he's the 30th person that I've interviewed that's had a direct Bigfoot encounter, and the rocks are extremely common. That's what they do to scare people off and to mark their territory. They do that, and they also break off little trees at about 7 or 8 feet. They break them off, and that's another sign that, hey, this is my territory. It's kind of like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant. You better stay out. And, so there was just that one big rock.
Yeah. So we didn't really tell our instructors about it till the next day. And then he said that there had been sightings in that area previous.
And it's
Beaver Mines?
Beaver Mines. There's the old mines around there.
Yeah. And it's along a glacier, glacier water, river type thing.
Yeah.
And it's by Tabletop Mountain.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called.
So what in your mind, other than the bowling ball sized rock, makes you think that to this day that it was a Bigfoot?
Well, there's no other explanation because there was no other campers in the area.
Yeah.
And for the Native Americans, us being Native on the other side, in Canada, blood on the other side of the border in Canada, Alberta, there's belief in Bigfoot, and there's actually people that have seen them, the older people.
Yeah.
It's a myth, it's a legend, but it's real.
I believe it's real because I have interviewed 30 people now that had experiences with it. And I myself had a spooky experience on a very remote island during a 3-day canoe trip where someone threw something huge in the water. It was a lot bigger than a beaver tail splash. It scared the daylights out of us. And then another great big splash. So I really appreciate you sharing your story.
You're welcome. I'm happy to share it.
All right, this is Sean and Delphine, and they're from the Browning country where we've actually had quite a few sightings, but go ahead and share what you've experienced.
When we were getting wood and it was in the middle of winter. And when me and my brother went up there, I was going to cut down a tree, and I was wondering where he was at, so I went and dropped a tree on him.
Yeah.
But when I turned around, I seen a shadow on my left. So I cut the tree down, and when I cut it down, I almost dropped it on him because I thought that shadow was him. But when I looked, that shadow was running tree to tree, and I stopped what I was doing, and I told my brother, let's just leave this here and let's just go. So we were walking out, and as we got to the road, and I told him, hey, I seen something, and he goes, I seen it too. He's seen it, but me, I seen the shadow running
But
trees.
he actually saw the Bigfoot, huh?
Yeah, he seen the Bigfoot, and I seen the shadow because I thought the shadow was him. That's why I dropped the tree.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
How big did he describe it as?
Oh man, it must have been about 8, maybe 9. I was thinking. Yeah.
8 or 9 feet.
Well,
Wow.
when I used to go up there before, I used to hear it bark like a dog.
It barked like a dog.
Yeah,
Isn't that something?
and then when I would, I'll say, hey, somebody left their dog way up here. So I was trying to call it to me, and then here it wouldn't come. It wouldn't come to me.
Oh, it's a good thing it didn't come.
So I was thinking, there must be one that watches out for the family, like a scout that watches out
Kind
for
of a sentinel.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? And then you had a situation where the Bigfoot kicked your dog, huh?
Yeah, it was like about 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And we heard something running, and here it just kicked our dog and kept going.
Could you see it?
No, we couldn't see it because we had the curtains closed.
Oh, but you heard a running, a plod,
Yeah, a
plod, and
big
then a
old-
kick and the dog whining.
Yeah, and it wasn't on 4, it was on 2.
How do you know?
Because the way it was thumping. It was just
Did
thump.
you look for tracks the next day?
No. And then it did it, about
About a week ago.
About a week ago.
Wow.
It
but
ran
this
through
one seemed like a
again.
juvenile. It was lighter.
It was lighter.
Yeah.
And where do y'all live? Kind of in the...
Up there they call it Sweet Pine, but they up there by Homagun Ridge
Oh, okay.
area. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, as you've been out walking around there, have you ever noticed a pattern of broken trees up about 7, 8, 9 feet where they're broken?
No, we seen a tree pushed in the tree.
A tree pushed in?
with the root facing up, and we were trying to find out a place where it would come from.
Wow,
And it
sounds
was
like
nothing.
you've had a lot of experiences. Any others you'd like to mention?
Oh, that's quite a bit.
That one when we parked. You remember I was telling you to watch those bears? They were up in that little hill.
Oh yeah, and that thing peeked over those trees. It just kind of peeked over and it peeked over at us, and then it got back down, and it was.
When we would look away, and he'd look back over at us, and when we look at him, and then he'd duck back down.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was
he
like he was
ducked down.
following the horses. Yeah.
But you had an auntie or something that saw one, and one of them was injured?
Yeah, and there was a mother and two of them, two young ones, and one of the young ones was limping, and so and here these wolves, a pack of wolves. She just seen a pack of wolves chasing them.
You could see it, or she could
did.
see it?
She could see him, and then later on, the dog went down. Say about a day later or two, and the dog bring up half of it.
Half of the Bigfoot?
Yeah, with the ribs and the was it the hip and the leg, and then they called the game warden. And here the game warden come and confiscated it, and they were trying to get it back from the game warden, but the game warden wouldn't let it go.
And the
So
game
the
warden
dog-
would never say anything about it. Nothing in the paper, nothing in any kind of news.
So the dog went down there and come up with the leg. They come up with the leg, and here it looked like it had human toenails.
Yeah.
And he was making it bend in a video. They got a video of it.
Wow, what's their names?
Hiram Upham.
Hiram?
Yeah, Hiram Upham.
Hiram's a friend of
Pastor.
mine.
Yeah, he's a pastor.
Hiram and his wife were making the Bigfoot leg
No,
bend?
his daughter.
His daughter.
His daughter,
seen it.
which daughter? Carrie Lynn?
Yeah.
How
She's
come they
seen
don't
it.
got it on their Bigfoot channel? I know,
Well,
I
they
know
got
her
it-
and Leilani pretty well.
They got it on Bigfoot Lives. It's
Oh,
it's a
Bigfoot Lives.
documentary, and it's in there.
It's in there.
And I
That's
guess
crazy.
they put the foot in the freezer.
Uh-huh.
And the mother, my auntie, told him, "You better take that. It's gonna spoil my meat." So he goes outside and he buries it. And but they were getting bothered before that. It was walking around their house.
Who was walking around?
The Bigfoot was walking around because that must have been its baby. You know?
Oh man!
Must have smelled it or something.
They were walking around Hiram's house.
Yeah, looking for it because they had his leg.
Wow!
So when they buried it, it came back and it dug it up and it took its.
Well, I know Hiram pretty well. In fact, I've spoken, sang in his church one time, and he's a very well-respected Native American pastor over there. And I had an amazing story where there was this guy that came to my window back when I had a little shop back here. And I said, "Oh, hi, what's your name?" And he said, "Oh, I'm Daniel." And we shook hands. And he said, "I got like a shock from you when I shook your hand. What was it?" And I said, "I don't know, try it again." So I shook his hand, and he starts speaking in a heavenly language. And he starts crying, and he dropped his ice cream cone. And he's looking up at me, "What did you do to me? What did you do to me?" And he was a police officer in Browning named Daniel, who he'd had a big fight with his wife, and he'd left his family. And after the Lord touched him, I called Hiram and I said, "Hiram, you need to minister to this guy. He's had a falling out with his wife, but God touched him at my business." And anyway, Hiram ministered to him, and he went back to his wife. This here is the guy that God zapped him when we shook hands. He dropped his ice cream cone, and God ended up reconciling him to his wife, partly through Pastor Hiram Upham. Now, Pastor Hiram Upham is just a real pillar of the Blackfeet Native Christian community. So the Blackfoot gentleman you just heard from mentioned that a juvenile's leg was actually taken into the custody by Pastor Hiram Upham here. And now he comes by my store, and sure enough, the story is true. So tell about your wife seeing the juveniles and the story of the leg.
Okay. I was in town for some reason or other. I forgot. I wasn't out to our place, and it's about 14 miles west of Browning on the Star School Road, right where it meets the 89 highway. And anyway, they were. It was broad daylight, and our big window faces over across the creek, over to that area. And my daughter told her mother, "Look, I see it's a Bigfoot walking over there." And it was a full-grown Bigfoot. It probably was a female. And by the time my wife got up to look out the window over there in that direction, it had already walked behind the brush trees. But just before that happened, there was some cows over there. And when this thing began to come out of the brush, the cows all took off running. And some of them were just running against the fence, trying to get away, from this, And they ran the other way, those cows. But it didn't chase them, it was just walking. But when my wife got up to look out, she saw two small ones, maybe about 3-4 feet high. And they were running behind, must have been their mother. And so anyway, that was the encounter they had. And then about maybe 3 weeks later, we had a dog that ran down by the river, and actually she brought up one of the lakes, and it was more part of the leg than the one she brought up later that we got.
The hip and everything.
Yeah. But then we were in Great Falls when this happened, when that dog brought this leg up, and so our daughter called us and she says what that dog did. So anyway, my wife said, well, don't let anybody know about it. Just keep it hidden, But she went ahead being scared. She called the game warden. Well, they came up and they got that leg.
Was it real hairy and everything?
Yeah, just that first leg. They got that and they took it, but we never heard any more on that,
Yeah.
And then
Took it
a
into
few days
secrecy.
later, the dog brought the other one.
Wow.
And that's the one that we have in the video. And you can see it in the video that it's not an animal leg, because the animal leg in the back part is different than a human leg.
Yeah.
But this had the leg of a human. And
But
right
real
down-
hairy like an animal. Like.
well, the skin was pretty much taken off of it. But you could see the foot, and it didn't have claws. It had nails like on your toe,
Big old toes?
Yeah, big old toes, but it had nails on it.
Now, what would differentiate it from a human foot?
Well, actually, the foot that was brought up by the dog was small, so it had to be maybe one of those small babies
Yeah.
that was got killed or something. But anyway, but the leg itself that our dog brought up, it was stinky.
Yeah.
And brought it up, and we took it, and then we videotaped the leg, and my daughter's husband was moving it around, showing that it had the same structure of a human,
Yeah.
not an animal, and with the feet and the toenails and stuff.
And why is it that you're sure that it's not a human if it looked kind of like a human?
Well, being young, the bottom of the feet was like calloused, to where it was. You could tell it didn't wear shoes,
Yeah.
And it was, like an animal's foot, like a dog or whatever.
Yeah.
How they're kind of got that.
The pads?
Yeah, a pad. Yeah, that's kind of what it had.
They had,
And but one of these days, I'd like to show you that video so you can actually see it yourself.
Yeah, that would be something. You still have it, huh?
Yeah, we still have it.
Our dog brought this first piece of a foot with the leg up to the hip. When it had the entrails with it, that one. That was taken by the Fish and Game. And when they left, our dog went down by the river somewhere and brought the other foot up.
He had toenails like ours.
Yes.
It never had claws. It didn't have no claws. And if you put it like this, looked like a human's nails, fingernails.
Had taken to Great Falls, and they tried to analyze some of the hair and what was on her, but they still was unable to identify what it was.
The neighbor.
Oh, you video it? There's its knee right there. Yeah, because by his hand is the hip joint, hip socket. There's the knee, and then there's the ankle part. That's the foot. That's the heel right back there. It's a beaver. That one big as his sack. How about a little bit foot? How far forward can that go? How far forward can that knee go? Oh yeah. Look out, little bit. Stand up. Stand up.
Watch this cushion. Watch this cushion.
This is good.
Oh, Dad,
that's what it looks like. Show us our parts. You've got. Yeah, that's tiny. Got brown hair, kind of brownish, straight hair.
Her husband moving it around, you know, but it was really steep. And what we done is we wrapped it up, we stuck it in our deep freeze, just to kind of keep it for whatever. And then finally my wife said, you better take that out of the deep freeze and go bury it, because if that deep freeze goes out, boy, it's going to stink up our house. You know? So I took it out, and I really wrapped it good with a lot of plastic. And I took it north of our house, maybe about 50 feet or so, and I dug a hole about that deep. I put it down there and I covered it up. So I don't know if animals had it, you know, dug it out or whatever, because when we began to dig for it, I forgot exactly where I dug, so we were digging holes all over. We finally found a place where a lot of the plastic was coming out of the ground, but there was no leg, just the plastic, yeah. So whatever it was must have was able to get that, you know.
Well, it's interesting that the first leg that did go to the Fish and Game, total secrecy, and that's what I've seen again and again. That when the government officials get involved with the Bigfoot situation, there's always total secrecy and a cover-up.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, how far was your home, for instance, from that old abandoned KOA there? This might be Bigfoot Central right here. There's a spiral staircase.
Oh, across the river, you mean?
Like where the Kentucky Fried Chicken used to be, and that KOA.
Oh, that's
where you turn to go up the looking glass.
I'd say maybe about 4 miles from our house. You know?
Only about 4 miles.
Yeah, see the old highway, you know, from Browning 89 comes up and it turns, and there's KOA. Okay. And then it keeps it going, then it goes up on a hill, then it comes down into Cutbank Creek. Okay, we lived on Cutbank Creek.
Cutbank Creek. Because in Incredible Bigfoot 2, I interviewed a native gal, and she said she saw a mom and a dad and a juvenile go up onto that mountain, kind of just behind that KOA, up there, up the ridge. And she saw them clearly, the whole family. And what you're saying is there was a mom probably and 2 juveniles in that case. So it's definitely a Bigfoot habitation around that area. It was just 4 miles away from that other incident that I videoed. This is Linda, and she had a sighting of a Bigfoot in an area. She didn't even know it, but there's been a fairly well-known sighting in the Kiowa Camp region over around the reservation around Browning. And she didn't even know there was such a sighting, but she had a sighting there also. And that's what I'm finding. Wherever there's a real sighting, there'll be other real sightings to confirm that.
Yeah, it was probably end of the summer, going up towards Looking Glass, and I had 2 other ones with me, and they're looking through binoculars, and they're like, pull over, pull over. And all I seen was from the top, chest up, and the male, the dad or whatever, going over the ridge. And then I'm looking again, and by this old tree, there's a little one playing, and then all of a sudden, it must have been the mom or something, she moved, and they both went over the ridge.
Well, at least we know there's some kind of critter up here. Well, this is some kind of a lookout anyway. Could be cattle or horse. I gotta just come. There's some tracks down there we're gonna go check out. Certainly has the appearance of some kind of track.
Yeah, and we've had some. I've never been taken any. What do you call it?
Foot casts.
Yeah, but there has been some by our place that we saw. You know.
Yeah.
And
how big were they?
They were about like this.
Yeah, about 18 inches. Wow.
And
that's not something.
And then one time, my wife, we had a little travel trailer outside of our house. Our house set like this, and there's a lawn, then a travel trailer. And she was in there doing some schoolwork, you know, catching up on her schoolwork, and she heard this scream. But she didn't know what it was, but she said it was really a high-pitched scream. And as it began to come down lower, it went into like a laugh, you know. Wow. Just really a short laugh like that. But she didn't know what that was, you know. She just got mad, you know. She thought it was a bull or something, you know.
Yeah.
And she said, I better run to the house because if that bull comes over, I'm going to have a hard time getting from the travel trailer into the house. So she took off of the house, you know. And but she heard that. And then a couple of times she heard it again, and my daughter also heard it again.
It's unearthly. It's not like any animal you've ever heard, and it's really something. Yeah. Well, thank you, Pastor Hiram.
Okay, then. Sure, appreciate being able to say a few words on this.
Yes.
Hey, you ready?
Yeah.
Now tell the Bigfoot story. You there?
Yeah.
All right, tell that Bigfoot story about Shorty or whatever over in the car shaking.
Oh, we lived on the farm?
Yeah.
Well, I think us kids, we was about teenagers. Shorty is about middle school. We live on 3,500 acre farm out in Cropper. And we was looking for Shorty. We couldn't find him. When we found him, he was in the car shaking, drawing a picture of Bigfoot. And was like, where's your bicycle at, Shorty? Bigfoot had it. So
he said Bigfoot had his bicycle? And how old was Shorty?
See, Shorty's about 6th, 7th grade.
6th or 7th grade?
To the barn.
And he said Bigfoot took his bicycle?
Yeah.
Was he funning or was he for real?
No, he's for real. He was crying and shaking, carrying on.
So he was in 6th or 7th grade and Bigfoot took his bicycle.
So we go down to the backer barn and we see his bike laying there. So we grabbed it, tried back, and when we swore today, we seen Bigfoot sitting there eating a leaf off of a tree. So we all start running back.
When you got the bicycle, Bigfoot was eating a leaf off a tree?
Yeah.
Wow. What do you look like?
He's tall, black, and hairy. All we know is we ran.
And you ran. He was sitting down, so you couldn't tell how tall he was, but do you have any guess?
No, he was standing up.
Oh, and how tall did he look?
Off of a tree. Well, we were small. Yeah. He was pretty big. All we know, we took off running.
Yeah, but you don't know if he was 7 or 8 or 9 feet tall?
I can't remember. That was years and years ago, about 35 years ago.
In what town?
Shelbyville, Kentucky.
What?
Cropper in Shelby County, Kentucky.
Yes, Cropper in Shelby County. We lived on a farm. It was 3,500 acres. Nobody lived there, but...
That is something else.
The other creek was my other one. My sister.
And Shorty, was he a scaredy cat type of guy, or was he a pretty level-headed?
He wasn't.
He wasn't, but he was...
And then it had a sighting. The Banta Road is on down the road from us about 10 miles. And it's a sighting. Somebody, back in the 80s is when this was. Somebody had a sighting of they seen Bigfoot.
Wow, well, I believe you, ma'am, because this is the 31st Bigfoot eyewitness testimony that I have taken. And you're not really eyewitness because you're not right here, but in a way you are by the phone. And I believe it because I've had pastors and football referees and very credible people tell me they saw him.
I believe there's a Bigfoot out there. It's after we've seen it.
And how about you, sir? What's your name?
Ernest.
Ernest. And do you know Shorty?
Yeah, barely. I've seen him before, but I was a little kid.
What's your prognosis on this story?
I can't remember. I've heard stories. I heard it's pretty tough, but the girls beat him up. No.
It's pretty tough, but the girls beat him up. But the girls in Kentucky are probably something you don't want to mess with. Thank you, ma'am. And one of you graciously took the time to write me and said, you know what we enjoy so much about your shows is that in the other shows, they just read the letter from the people. But you actually interview them face to face. And then you let us decide for ourselves what we think about the testimony. Hey, the South's going to do it again. I'm getting all these Bigfoot stories from the South this time. And now we've got Sherry Kimsey from Hiawassee, Georgia, with a sighting.
Do I just start telling my story?
Yeah, you just start telling.
Oh, okay. This was quite a while back, probably in the late 90s. My husband and I were out one night just driving along, and we were down a dirt road, and sometimes your headlights, when you're going through somewhere, your headlights are like your peripheral vision. And
right.
So we went by this house, and they had a nightlight there, and there was a field and only one tree, and standing right beside the tree was this Bigfoot. And like I say, he was probably between 7-8 feet tall, or she. So I hollered, and I was like, turn around. So my husband backed the car back, and our headlights hit exactly where the Bigfoot had been standing, and it was probably maybe, I don't know, what is that, 100 yards? What I was talking about earlier, there was like 100 yards between the tree and the wood line. And when our headlights hit him, he just stopped right in the middle of right in the edge of the woods. And It was probably late October, early November. And his hair was long, and he kind of looked kind of mangy looking. He didn't look real healthy. And the wind was blowing some, and his arms were hanging down, and you could see his hand blowing in the wind, kind of.
Oh, his hand's blowing in the wind.
And he was just kind of standing there really still. If we didn't know what we were looking for or looking at, he would have just blended in. It was incredible. So finally, I think he just gave up on us leaving, and he just kind of eased off down in the woods, off over the hill. And there wasn't a bunch of bouncing when he was walking or anything. He was just smooth as silk when he went down through there.
Wow.
Just amazing. Yeah.
And a minute ago you were saying that he went somewhere in a real hurry.
Yeah, that was from the tree where he was standing to the edge of the woods, which was probably about 100 yards. And he made it by the time we turned the truck around into the driveway next door and shined lights where he had been standing. So, I mean, it was just that fast.
Really fast.
Yeah.
But you're not saying that it was 100 yards away. About how far was the animal away from where you were at?
Well, when we first saw him, he was probably, I don't know, maybe 100 feet from us.
Wow.
Yeah. And, but yeah, he was.
I bet you remember it vividly to this day.
Yeah, everything that happened, it was just pretty exciting. We were yelling at each other. Did you see that? Did you see that? And
about what color was it?
He was kind of a reddish brown.
Had a slight orange hue, just like this, like dark brown.
Dark brown, but a little bit orangish.
Just like this.
Yeah, kind of a reddish.
Yeah. I've often wondered if during the season changes, if they're like deer, if their fur might change a little bit during the season.
I wonder if he was shedding, getting ready for his winter coat.
It could have been, but yeah, it was kind of cool. And
well, a guy from Alabama told me there was one that was reddish in that area that had a face that looked like a yield sign.
Well, we weren't able to see his face. Because it was just, he was kind of standing away from the light was behind him here, and he was kind of looking at the tree. I don't know if he was fiddling with the tree or what was going on, but as soon as he noticed we turned around, he was gone.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, my husband saw,
he saw one come across the road in front of him when he was going to drive up our driveway, and there's a really steep bank right there.
Yeah.
And he said he took 3 steps, and he was all the way to the top of the bank, and that it was probably as high as the roof is on this building.
Wow.
Yeah, and he came around the back, and it was behind his grandfather's old house, and he comes running in the house and gets me, and we come back out, and they were screaming. I think there was like 3 of them, and they
3
were
Bigfoot or 3 people that saw
Bigfoot.
it?
Yeah,
3 Bigfoot.
yeah.
Wow.
And there was one to the left. His mom lived just above us, and one above. There was no cabin road, and there was one there, and then there was one here. And originally we thought there was one, and it was running around, and I'm like, it's not making any noise.
Yeah.
And then we figured out later on, you talk about this stuff, just, oh my goodness, what happened? And so anyway, we decided there was more than one, and they were not happy about something. I don't know what it was, but you could tell they were unhappy. And
were they similar in size, about 8 feet?
I didn't see them. You could only hear them. Yeah.
Hear
now,
them.
my husband said that the one he saw go up the bank, which was one of them, he said he was probably at least 8 feet.
At least 8 feet.
Yeah.
Was your husband scared, or?
No. He's just excited.
He's just excited, yeah.
Yeah.
He's probably a hunter. He probably had a firearm in there. Now, how big of a place is Hiawassee?
Well, it's not a real big place, but there's a lot of people. We've got a lot of people moving in, and so, you're stuff like that, the wildlife and the Bigfoot and all, they're just kind of dwindling away, And
well, thank you so much, Sherry. And if you had to pin a date on this, what date might you have said?
Probably, I'd say probably in the late 90s. Yeah, somewhere
thank you
around
so much
97.
for sharing with us.
Well, you're more than welcome. I'm happy to.
Sherry is a 5th generation, at least, in that area. And her husband had another vivid Bigfoot encounter. After they saw it together, he said, now I can tell you my version. Now, what was the gist of his?
Well, he was sitting under a hemlock tree one morning, and he was hunting, and he thought it was starting to get daylight, and he thought he saw a bear off in the distance foraging behind a log. And as the daylight got better and better, all of a sudden he figured out, instead of the bear putting its head down and eating whatever it was reaching from the ground to its mouth.
Oh wow, you could see it pretty vividly.
Yeah. And as daylight got brighter, it kept coming toward him, and finally he could see the whole thing, and it was a Bigfoot, and it was a female. He was so close to her he could see, her parts. And so there was a pine tree or a hemlock or something, and she climbed up in that tree. I don't know, he never said what he thought she was after or anything, but he said that when she got to the top of that tree, he said she took hold of the top of the tree and she chomped down on the wood, the trunk, and just broke it out. And it was about that big around, and she just broke it out. And he said that all of a sudden she must have got wind of him, because he said she didn't climb out of that tree. He said she fell out of that thing and said took off running. So she must have smelled him.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Yeah.
This is Sherry's first time in Glacier Park.
Yeah.
Thanks again. All right, so these guys are building a new Range Riders baseball stadium in Kalispell, and Chase here had a pretty interesting story that he told me.
So back in Georgia, there's a story about Bigfoot, and there was a couple that either hit the Bigfoot, shot the Bigfoot. There's a whole, something happened. Well, they called the police officers. They came down to investigate, and about a few hours later, there's a black SUV, pulls up, takes the Bigfoot, and just dips off. They don't hear anything, they don't see nothing, just gone.
Just like official Men in Black come, and
Exactly.
off goes the Bigfoot.
Exactly.
All right, this is Terry. He's a fine man that I've been visiting with, and he had an encounter in Florida he's going to tell us about.
When I was about 18 years old, we had an encounter with a Yeti. We called them Yetis in Florida. We were out on a dune buggy doing in the sands. We run across one. We tried to chase it, but it ran away.
You tried to chase it with your dune buggy? Oh my gosh. And how big was it?
It was tall. It was big.
Like how tall?
Well, I would say at least 7, 8 foot.
7, 8 foot. Was it walking on 2 feet or was it down like a chimpanzee?
No, it was walking on 2 feet.
Wow, what color?
Kind of brownish.
Kind of brownish.
blonde.
Where were you at?
In Cocoa, Florida.
Cocoa, Florida. Well, on this very show, Incredible Bigfoot 4, there's another eyewitness testimony from Florida. This is the show that's kind of featuring a lot of the southern, what they call skunking or the Bigfoot down there. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
So, Terry, what happened when you tried to chase the animal?
It took off.
It took off?
Yeah, it took off running, and then we...
Were you on the beach kind of with the dunes?
No, we were... Well, there's sand dunes in the woods, even in Florida. Florida's all sand.
Yeah.
And we came out, and when we seen it, we chased it with the dune buggy, and then we finally did a turnaround, and it went into the woods where the trees were.
Too thick for you.
It smelled. It had a weird smell.
It smelled. It had a weird smell. And was it fast?
Yeah.
Pretty dang fast, huh? Like faster than a human its size, or?
Oh yeah, he had bigger. He had bigger strides.
So you got to see it pretty good.
Oh yeah.
And it's about 8 foot tall. Did you happen to cast any of the prints or take pictures?
No, we were too young. We were out having fun in the dune buggy.
Yeah, isn't that something? Terry here is actually a retired police officer.
Yes, first of all, Terry is my brother-in-law for the last 45 years.
Yeah, so you know this guy.
Oh, yeah. And he is a retired law enforcement in the state of Texas, both in the sheriff's department and in the prison system.
See,
he
that's
has one of the biggest hearts I've ever met of any guy.
Well, he's taking all these young ladies out for dinner. That's a big heart.
Yeah. So
that's what I'm talking about, folks. The people that are giving these testimonies, by and large, are some really rock-solid Christian people. That guy was an officer for many years. It's not just fly-by-night people. It's solid Christian people I have come to know and love. Now the next guy that came up, he's from Carolyn, Texas, and so is Terry. Terry just showed him his badge. Well, here's Dave, and he saw a Bigfoot while he was inner tubing down the Willamette River.
Yep. I was inner tubing with some friends down the Willamette River, and it was at sunset, and about when it got kind of dark, we were coming up towards the shore, and there was it was really tall. It was about 8 foot tall, and it had red eyes, and it gave a grunt and 2 really loud splashes, and it was the weirdest sound I ever heard, and it just freaked us out. And we were all in inner tubes, and we just pushed away from the shore, and we got out of there and it was tall. He had red eyes, and I didn't actually see it. I saw the shape of like his eyes and just the very top.
Was it at dusk or something?
It was right at dusk.
Right at dusk. Isn't that something?
Yep.
You couldn't detect what color it was.
Nope.
But you saw those red eyes. That's
red eyes, and it was tall.
It
was really tall, and it was 2 stomps. It wasn't like it was an elk or anything. It was like it was tall.
2 big stomps.
And it was the weirdest grunt I had ever heard.
Was it really low and guttural?
Yeah. Well, it was just weird. I just never. It was very powerful though. It was like a, like that.
You could tell it came from a big cavernous body.
Oh yeah, and it freaked us out because we were just floating down the Willamette.
Thanks for your story. We appreciate it.
Cool.
Well, Dave, I was on a overnight canoe trip like you were, and that's where I had my experience, where we were camping on one of those remote islands, and we heard really ginormous, huge splashes. We were freaked out already because we were both certain something was watching us, and then there was 2 big splashes, and that's what they do to scare people off.
Oh yeah, it was definitely. The sun was just going down, and you could have that red hue in the background, kind of.
Yeah.
And it scared the heck out of me. I thought it was like, I knew it was something big, and I saw 2 red eyes, and it was tall.
Well, Dave with the red eye Bigfoot sighting came by again this morning, and I asked him something that was making me curious, because I'd never had a red eye Bigfoot report. And I asked, did the red emanate from within the eyeball, or was it somehow a reflection from the red sunset? And he said, no, absolutely. It was definitely coming from within.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just curious about that because this is my 34th interview, and I'd never had one that said he had red eyes, but that would really be creepy. Now behind me here is Wild Horse Island, and the reason I'm showing it to you is a customer just gave me some footage of a mountain lion in the wild on Wild Horse Island moving quickly through the pines. And to me that's incredible for two reasons. Number one, I've canoed to that island, and it's about 1.25 miles out there. So this cougar had to swim 1.5 miles to get to this buffet of beautiful deer, elk, and rams. And two, not many people have seen a real wild mountain lion or filmed one in the wild. They are extremely elusive. After over 4,000 miles of hiking, cross-country skiing, fishing, hunting here in Montana, I've only seen a cougar once, and it was just a fleeting glimpse. But you know, I bet they've seen me. Though many people haven't seen Bigfoot, I bet Bigfoot has seen them, but not many people have ever seen them, even though we know they are plentiful here in Montana. The island hosts many even record bucks and lots of deer, and the swallows have made a home here in this rock ledge. Out there is beautiful Wild Horse Island, and it's a virtual paradise for almost record-sized mule and whitetail buck and ram and everything. And look, a cougar made the swim. I've canoed it, and it's well over 1 mile. A cougar made the swim and now has his own personal buffet paradise.
Montana has some of the largest cougar in the world, and my cougar adventure started in early October when I was going out in the Hunger Horse Reservoir. I thought I'd stop and pick some. When I came along the lake at a certain spot, I noticed a very beautiful patch of wild rose hips. I thought I'd stop and pick some. With my bucket about halfway filled, I decided I had to go to the bathroom. So I walked up by a big outcropping of rock. I thought I'd do my business there. So I had taken my trousers down, and all of a sudden, wham! A cougar jumped off of this rock. As he sprang for my back, he had to go through the top of this spruce tree just a little bit, and it diverted him just far enough that he missed me by about 3 feet.
Wild Horse is a virtual paradise for beautiful bucks.
Yeah, someone told me this was the best huckleberry slice around, so here I am.
What's your first name?
Nolan.
Nolan. All right. Well, here's Nolan from the Blackfeet Reservation, and he's had some encounters with Bigfoot as well on the tracks. Can you tell us a little about that, Nolan?
My partner Dewey and I was hunting up on a place called Yellow Mountain, and we had spotted some elk up in there. We waited for the one to come out, and waited, and these other bulls come over the top, and we were watching them once, waiting for them to come into the open. But something spooked them out. They weren't there long, they went back where they come from. And Dewey and I got tired of waiting for the one to come out. It started getting dark on us, so we walked out. The next day, he went back in the same spot and photographed prints that were on top of our prints of a Bigfoot that followed us out.
Wow.
And it followed us for a good couple hundred yards along the ridge line.
Wow.
And must have got tired of following us and dropped down. And
did he say how big the feet were?
He said they were, I wear about a size 10.5, he wears about a size 10.5. If we gave it a foot size, a boot size, it would be about a 15.
Okay, so big but not ginormous,
no,
like maybe 16 inches.
Yeah, It was a big foot. It was a big footprint.
A big footprint with toes and everything.
Yeah.
Huh? Was it snow or was it
There was snow on the ground. There was about a good 4 or 5 inches of snow up on the ridge line there. His tracks were right on top of our tracks. It was awesome.
Now he was also telling me, do you remember in the last Incredible Bigfoot Documentary 3, we were doing a recon in an area where there was a Bigfoot family sighted, and we saw a lodge pole that was curiously just snapped so cleanly off at about 7.5 feet. And I told him about it, and there's no human that would be tall enough to break that tree. Tell everybody what you told me.
Well, there's a place they call Sweet Pine.
Yeah.
Rodeo grounds. And it's one big side, one ridge is just all pines, next side is all aspens. And my nephew and I was hunting the aspen side, and he called me on the radio and walkie-talkies. He called me up to where he was standing. He said, come straight up, you should run into me. And there's an old overgrown road in there. It must be a seismic road or something.
Yeah.
And for about 100 yards, maybe a little higher than the ceiling, give or take, those trees that you spoke about was all just completely broke off at the even height, all the way down this old road. And we walked down it. We were walking under, and I was telling you what my dad had said, that's what they do. They mark their territory like that.
Yeah, see, that was a very curious thing that we found in that, and that's what I believed it was. Now, there was an old timer in Oregon. His job was to hire the guys for the Bureau of Land Management to go into remote timber sales and construct the roads. Well, he hired this guy and he went in there to construct the road. And as he was up there just starting to look things over, a Bigfoot came out of the forest there, reached in his service vehicle and grabbed a whole bag of oranges in a net sack and ate them without taking off the peelings. And he said that same thing happened where they had broken off the little trees to mark their territory.
My dad was a big game outfitter, and one night at camp, we were all sitting around visiting. We used to go back in the summertime like this, just go mess off for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He said, you guys keep talking about this, I'll show you something tomorrow. And I was young then, I didn't pay attention to what trail or where we were going. I just rode, and I was...
Just a second. I'm going to turn this baby around.
Well, my dad was a big game outfitter. And we used to go back in springtime like this, summertime, go back, just mess off. And my sister and I, my mother, was talking about Bigfoots in camp that night. He said, well, tomorrow, since we got nothing to do, I'll show you guys something. I was young enough where I didn't pay attention to where we were going. Everybody else knew where we were going, so I knew we weren't going to get lost. So I just went along for the ride.
How old were you?
How old was I then?
Yeah.
Probably about 12, 14.
Wow, 12 or 14,
so, I just rode. We just climbed and climbed and climbed. It was about a half a day climb on
in the
horseback.
truck? Oh, on horse?
And we get up on this ridge line, and the horses sensed something because they all start jumping around. But we rode that ridge line for a long ways, and we start finding these trees you're talking about. And they were broke off up high. They were like 9, 10 feet up, broke off.
Wow.
And they were big trees. They were pretty good sized diameter trees that we broke off. And they were just, every so often my dad was showing them, he says, another Bigfoot comes along, he can't reach that high. He better move along because there's somebody in there that's bigger than him.
Yeah. So he was pretty convinced that it was Bigfoot that had done that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we all know it's windy on the res. What would distinguish it from a windbreak?
Those trees are low enough to where wind would break them.
Yeah, see, that's the same with this one. It was in a little area where there really was no wind, even on a howling, browning wind.
Like these, they're all well protected.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah. So no wind is going to break the lower ones off.
Wow, so it's pretty big trees, like bigger than your arm, huh?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I just had a guy 4 days ago sit right at this table back here and said when he was a kid at Huckleberry Creek in Washington, him and his buddy was out just scouting around. They were Boy Scouts, and they saw a Bigfoot that was shaking a tree that was over 30 feet tall, and he was grunting and moving it back and forth. They said they got the heck out of there. Their muskets and everything were jingling, and they were running for their life.
We were hauling wood for my friend Pat Armstrong. Myself, Pat Armstrong, and Rick Horn. And we drove in up near a place called 9 Mile.
Yeah.
We drove this road in, goes south off the highway as far as we could take it. Turned around up there, we start making our way out as we was loading. We found a good stand of pines. It was our last few logs we needed to top off our load. We were coming out of there with our last load, and way over north of us we heard something yell. Pat Armstrong right off that, he yelled back at it, and he yelled right back. Rick said, what's that? I said, probably a Bigfoot. Rick said, no, that's not a Bigfoot. That's probably a coyote. I said, no, that's not a coyote. I said, do it again, Pat. So Pat did it again and it answered.
Ah.
And as soon as it answered the third time, on that over south of us, the coyotes start barking. I told Rick, those are coyotes, that's not.
Yeah.
And I told Pat, I said, yell at it again, see if it answers. And Pat started yelling, but it wouldn't answer. So I told, well, let's get our logs and get the heck out of here. So we loaded those last 3 logs, chained them down, drove out. And his son had lived up in Kiowa Camp. We passed him on the highway. Everett called his dad when he got home. He says, I could still see you guys in my rearview mirror. He said that Bigfoot come running up the side of the highway. Broad daylight.
Wow.
It come running up the side of the highway. It didn't have to jump the fence. It stepped over the fence, ran across the highway, stepped over it.
It just stepped over it. It had long enough legs.
Yeah, stepped over that
Did he
fence.
say how big it was?
He said it was huge. And it ran up the direction we had this come from.
Wow. Around Kiowa Camp. See, that's where this family was sighted. And
Yep.
I reported it and did some recon in Incredible Bigfoot 3.
Yeah.
And that's where we saw the broken off lodgepole.
Up in there is where I heard those ones that morning.
Up in there, huh? Wow.
So it's got to be an area where they frequent.
Yes.
And where that's at, you go further west, there's some big draws that come right out of the park, right out of the thickest, rockiest areas.
Yeah.
Onto the reservation site.
Uh-huh.
So I believe they're funneling out of those areas into 9 Mile.
Oh, okay, into 9 Mile. Interesting. Now, where we went, you know, that old abandoned Kiowa Camp hotel that's got a swimming pool at it and everything?
Yeah.
Well, you turn right there, I think it's 89.
89.
Yeah, and you go toward East Glacier, up that...
Up Looking Glass Road?
Yeah, up Looking Glass on a winding, and you get on up there.
Yeah.
And about 5 miles up there, we walked from there up to the very top, and there's an old fire lookout, abandoned foundation, where it looked like the tribe does some parking and necking in there. It had a sign on it, honk if you're horny.
Oh, really?
And it was in that.
I didn't write that.
You wrote that. Stop him for me, will you? Then we went back into the thickery from there. And that's where we saw what looked like Bigfoot tracks, but they were melted, so we couldn't tell for sure. But then we saw this, I'm not pooping you, we saw this ginormous grizzly track. And some people say, well, it just looked big because it was melted. But the proximity of the claws to each other, that don't change with melt. And they were like 8 inches wide. It was a giant bear, and my friend Leilani Upham and them, they saw the bear one time, and it was a giant blondish grizzly that was bigger than any bear they'd ever thought about. You seem like the real McCoy, man. You look like a guy that's really been around that territory and hunting, and your dad was an outfitter, and you've probably been in some of the prime Bigfoot country.
Oh, man. We had a lot of fun over the years, you know, just doing stuff like that with my dad. Sometimes it was just my dad and I going back in the mountains.
Yeah.
And we just go back ride.
Did he tell you any story of a sighting or anything?
He never really spoke about it.
Yeah.
My mother did. She told us a few stories. And they happened like probably, if I gave it a date, back in the 30s, 40s.
Back in the 30s or 40s?
Yeah.
Can you remember one of them at all?
There was one where this old family they'd go back in on horseback with a wagon and they would cut the trees down, cut for days and days.
Yeah.
And that night they were hearing something yell around. I can't even remember what area she said they were in, but it was out in the south, kind of around near Hartbeer.
Uh-huh.
And they had a racehorse with them. That boy rode the racehorse.
Oh,
Dad
yeah.
and mother was in the
For
wagon.
the Indian pony races and stuff?
Yes. And they set up their teepee, set up their camp, got everything. They start cutting wood. And one night they could hear something yelling. And the old guy would go outside and he'd yell at it, we're over here, come down. And the old lady would say, no, don't be yelling at it, that's not a person. He'd say, yeah, it is. They're probably cold, they're probably hungry, you know, we need to do something. And she told her son, go get your horse. Have a saddled up and ready to go. So he went out and had his horse near the teepee. And when that thing come down, the old man started screaming and yelling outside.
Yeah.
And that old lady, she sliced the canvas of the teepee with her knife so the boy didn't have to go out the door where that was all happening. He ran up, he jumped on his horse, that thing chased him.
The Bigfoot chased him?
It chased him. Wow. And it was close enough to where it was grabbing like hair out of his horse's tail.
Jeez.
It was like it would grab onto him a little bit, but couldn't get quite the grip.
Out by Mitten Lake in
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it was out near Heartview somewhere.
Wow.
And it chased him for quite a ways. It turned around and went back.
Yeah.
He made it into Heartview. He got help. They got all saddled up. By then it was morning. The sun was coming up again. They rode into where that camp was at. That whatever it was inside that teepee.
Oh my gosh,
And-
the Bigfoot got inside the
And
teepee.
it dragged this old man's body inside, killed the mother.
Killed the mother?
They ended up just literally circling the teepee halfway around so they wouldn't shoot each other. And they just started shooting that teepee. They killed whatever it was. And after they got the old man and the old lady's bodies out, all they said was it was a big hairy thing. They didn't label it as a Bigfoot or anything like
Well,
that.
did they tell the authorities or anything?
And so they just labeled it as something big and hairy. All the wood that they had gathered, they made a bed of logs, put that thing on the logs, covered it with more logs, and burnt it up.
Now, why did they do that? Is that just
I
an Indian
have
custom?
no idea why they did that. Maybe not understanding what it was, or they didn't care what it was, as long as they got the old lady and the old man's body back.
Wow, so the Bigfoot killed the old man and the old lady that were around and didn't run out. If I understand you correctly, the gal, maybe it was your mom or some gal, slit the teepee because they were in such a hurry to get out and they didn't want to go through the opening.
boy that rode away, his mother, cut the teepee so that he could escape through the hole she made.
But the Bigfoot did kill the old guy and the old woman, and
lady,
it was still in the teepee.
Yeah.
That's insane. Was that like
And
in
this
the
was like-
1930s?
This was back in either the 20s, 30s, because there was a story that was handed down to my mother by her old people.
Oh, so we're hearing some real Blackfeet, Baguni storytelling here, and this is an amazing story. So your mother wasn't an eyewitness or anything.
No.
She just heard the story passed down. I had the son of a Native American outfitter tell me that in the Heart Butte region, a wood-getting party heard a noise up on the hill, and so they thought it was somebody lost, and they called it, and then somebody else said, no, don't call it, that's probably a Bigfoot. And anyway, the Bigfoot came into camp. It almost got this young lad on a racing pony like they race with in the Indian relay races. They kind of scattered, but the two old people were left behind. They came back. The two old people were killed, and some kind of a posse gathered from the Heart Butte area and came out there and killed the beast, actually killed it. And they said they cremated it. And now Sean says he's heard this story.
Well, it happened way earlier than that. Happened in the 1800s.
In the 1800s.
Yeah,
Now
and
this
here,
guy told me he thought maybe 1920 or so.
Yeah, around then, the Blackfeet used to camp over there, but this family didn't camp with them. They camped far away.
Okay.
And while they were out there far away, they said they heard something holler in Blackfeet, help. It was hollering and talking in Blackfeet.
Talking in Blackfeet. What is the word for help in Blackfeet?
Probably Spumagit.
Wow, he was hollering help in the Blackfeet language.
And here they responded to him, but when it came to their camp and it was walking around.
Yeah.
Walking around and it wasn't human. So the grandmother said, if this thing comes in that door, I'm gonna cut that teepee open and you get the fastest horse and you run to the main camp and you get help.
Oh.
So as soon as it comes through that door, that old lady cuts the teepee and he takes off and runs to the other camp.
Who is he, a young man?
Yeah, young man. And then as soon as he comes back, the whole camp is killed.
The whole camp. How many did you hear it was?
Torn to pieces.
How many did you hear it was that was killed?
Man, it was kind of like a family. I heard it was a family.
Was killed.
Yeah.
Did you also hear then that the Blackfeet put a half circle around the teepee and killed the beast?
No, I'm not. I didn't hear that part, but that's all I heard. And then this same one my brother-in-law, they were out there hunting, and they heard the exact same thing. It was talking to him, and I was saying
Calling
help.
to him help in Blackfeet.
Help. Yeah, it was calling to him help. And here, they knew about that story because they headed out of there.
Well, that's so amazing, because even in the Bible, you'll get the different writers of the Gospels that give a slightly different view of the same instance, and you had a slightly different take on the same instance. But from your recollection, this was way early, like in the 1800s.
Yeah. Well, they're fast.
Yeah.
Quick. And I think they lived for a long time.
Yeah, you think they lived for a long time.
It could be the same one that was calling that one, or probably the same one in this story.
Do you think they're fully human type beings, or do you think they're interdimensional?
I think they were bred for work.
You think they were bred for work?
Yeah, that's what
Wow.
I think so.
By who? The natives?
Probably from the old ones, yeah. From way, way, way before the flood, you know?
Wow, you think they were bred for work?
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
And they're
That's
intelligent.
amazing. You've heard the same story as I did.
Yeah, and they're intelligent, you know?
Yeah.
They're very intelligent.
I asked this guy, do you think they're intelligent? And he said, well, yeah, they're a lot smarter than us. You don't see them down here working like we do.
Live off the land, huh?
Wow, thanks for confirming that story.
Yeah.
Did you hear that it was in the Heart Butte region?
Yeah.
Same region. So there's got to be truth to this story, because more than one person heard it. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is pretty amazing, because it's the first time I've ever heard of a Bigfoot killing people. Although there was a reservation out in Washington that a gal told me that her tribe was pretty jumpy about the Bigfoot in the early days, because they'd sneak into camp and steal babies from the teepees.
I lived up in Canada. I went all the way up into Bellacoola, British Columbia. I went down on the docks because the king salmon were starting to come in.
Yeah.
And the seals would come in and eat the king salmon, and the orcas would come in and eat the seals.
Oh.
And I wanted to see some orcas. I'm from here. I wanted to see an orca.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting on the docks, and these two, I said, and they said, oh, you're the guy from Montana. I said, yeah. We got to visiting, and they said, do you hunt? I said, yeah. And they showed me up above their village. There was a huge bowl. They said, if you hunt down here, which you're welcome to, don't go in there.
Yeah.
And this goes back to, like you spoke about, old time stories.
Yeah.
There was a time in their history that these boys told me about that. They had this agreement with the Bigfoots. This big bowl way up above their town. All tribes talk about it. There was a time when we spoke to the animals, and the animals spoke to us.
Uh-huh.
We understood each other.
Like 100 years ago, or generations ago, like 200-300 years ago?
Like I'd say about over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Where we were just like on their level.
Wow.
And well, these guys obviously they spoke with these Bigfoots. When these Bigfoots come down, all the elders in the village met them.
Yeah.
These boys told me this story. All the elders met these Bigfoots outside of their little village. They all sat down. The old ladies came out, fed everybody.
Including the Bigfoot?
Including the Bigfoots.
Wow. There was several of them. It was a convocation.
Yeah. They all sat down and they talked, and they came to an agreement to where we don't hurt you, you don't hurt us no more.
Yeah.
And the Bigfoots explained to them, well, up there, that's where we live.
Ah.
You guys always come into where we live and you take our food. That's why we come down here and take your food. We take your people, because you come up there and hurt our people. So that night they came to that agreement, and that's the place that those boys told me, don't go in there because the Bigfoots own it.
Yeah.
And from the bottom up, looking up there, it's a huge bowl. So to this day, from way back then to this day, they still have that understanding.
Wow, to this day.
The Bigfoots don't come down into their town. They don't go up there.
And what is their town now?
Bellacoola.
Well, that's pretty amazing to me, because my friend Jeff, who picks a ton of huckleberries for me, he is one of the best huckleberry pickers ever, and a real mountain man. And he told him that George Shaw, which is one of the real revered huckleberry pickers, and some say he has native blood too, and I'm sure he probably does, told Jeff and his buddy don't go in there into that certain area. And I know where it is. I'm curious, maybe checking it out a little sometime. Don't go in there. That's where the Sasquatch have their abodes, and there's some little kind of almost tent-looking structures, almost a little resemblance of a teepee, but there's nothing covering them. But Jeff thought, he was young and he's a strong, swarthy guy, and so him and his brothers went up there and picked. And he said 2 Bigfoot that were about 6'7" and wide, like maybe even 600 pounds and really wide, came out and started throwing rocks at him, and the rocks were maybe like 3 feet wide and this thick. And those rocks were coming chucking, and they saw him clear in the daylight, and they got out of there. They thought, man, this ain't nothing for us. Well, Nolan and Andrea, we really, really appreciate these stories, and it just adds to the collective database that people know and need to know about the Bigfoot. And obviously you have some heritage that has a lot more knowledge than us white guys do, so thank you very much. So Nolan, in your mind, what do you think they are? Do you think they're part humanoid? Do they have the intelligence of a humanoid creature, their own race, or what's your theory?
I believe they're their own race.
Yeah.
And they're obviously smarter than us.
Yeah.
Because you don't see them down here working jobs.
There we go, buddy. I love it. Speaking of smart, these Blackfeet must be pretty smart, because all of them are driving about $60,000 pickups. After Nolan told me in April of 2023 I couldn't really do a recon, but at least I wanted to take my sons fishing to the area. That's a big fish. Nice. It's a pretty good size one though. It might be the biggest, I don't know.
We really have found the spot.
Yeah, they like these black Panther Martins.
Oh, that is a pretty big one. I think that might be the biggest.
It is a good size one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Boy, when I first hooked it, it just stayed, man. It didn't go nowhere. There was no pulling it in for a goodly while. Oh, that is a beauty, isn't it? That could be close to a 5-pounder.
Hey.
Okay, Josiah's got another one. Abe had a follow just now, he said. Look at that, baby! Not too hard, Abe, or it'll break. Now we're in the beautiful Heart Butte region, going to Mitten Lake. At least attempting to. Well, the Rav did good there. Look at that nice culvert, huh? Geez, do I get a run at it, or just try to ease through?
I think you can ease through because it picks back up, you know.
Culvert's not quite working the way it's designed to. Okay, I think I'm okay. What do you guys think?
I think you're good. Your right tires will be on strong land, and your left tires will be on mud.
Okay. Well, here we are at Mitten Lake. These look like flippin' pelicans. Josiah said, if there's pelicans, it's probably because it's good fishing. This here area is known as the Heart Butte area. And this is also the area that Nolan described the amazing Bigfoot attack as having happened in. This astonishing photograph was taken near Montana's Granite Peak in 1829 by French photographer Joseph Nikifor Niepce. The photo has been authenticated by the Professional Grading Services. The small settlement of Granite Peak was reported to have communed very well with the Bigfoot in this picture. His actual name was Sasquatch. The local community made up a rumor that Bigfoot was a mad beast to keep new settlers away from their extremely valuable gold mine. The very term named Sasquatch that is often used today originated from the families of Granite Peak. Sasquatch stood at an astounding height of 13 feet 9 inches, according to records kept by the Kalispel family. He was considered a true gentle giant. The last generations of the Kalispels recently came forward with all the written records and family diaries on their relationship with the Sasquatch. The movie in production does not yet have a release date. This article appeared in Campbell's Believe It or Not.
I have the burn scar up Boise.
All right, folks, here's Jonathan McElrath, and he saw Bigfoot.
Whistled at him.
Let's get the story, Jonathan.
Well, it was about 12:30 at night, and the kids and my wife were up camping just above Boise. And there was a burn scar on the other side, and I was just whistling, and the damn thing repeated what I said, what I whistled. And then we saw it, and before I could even turn around, the kids were in the car with the door locked.
The what?
The kids were in the car with the door locked.
They ran to the car and locked the door.
Yeah.
You were outside?
Yes.
Did you have to get them to unlock the door?
I was pissed, yeah.
You were pissed?
But it was almond colored.
Almond colored? Wow, and how large did it appear?
About 12 feet or so or more.
12 feet?
It was big because it went up over the hill really quick, and it wasn't running.
Isn't that something? You know, there's a famous show about the Bigfoot in Idaho. I think they call it Moscow Mountain. This isn't nothing to do with Moscow Mountain. This is around north of Boise. About how far?
I would say 28 miles.
28,
30 miles.
Pretty rugged country?
Yep.
Yes, it is up there.
Yeah.
But it walked through the burn scar, and there was a full moon right behind it. It was like, wow.
Wow. So you could see it silhouetted
Yes.
by the... Did you happen to go look for tracks the next day or anything?
We got so damn scared, we got in the car and left our camping equipment and went home.
You left the camping equipment and took off?
Yeah.
That's
it was
crazy.
I don't do things like that.
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive.
Because it scared the daylights out of you.
Well, the kids, they seen it first and it was like, and it whistled back the same thing. But anyway, This is like 1987.
Is there any other distinctive features? Any smell or any sounds?
Nope. All it did was whistle the same thing I whistled.
You know, you're the second person that told me that Bigfoot whistled and that he mimicked what was brought to him.
You can remember pretty much a lot of things, yes. And they picked up one that got in the fire. The firefighters found it, and the government took it. I don't think they're human myself.
What do you think? What's your opinion?
They're alien.
They're interdimensional beings is what they are.
They're interdimensional.
Bigfoot can disappear in a flash. You shoot at it and gone.
You know, I had that told to me on more than one occasion, and I kind of dismissed it as tall tales. But then last year, the person who told me that also had tremendous pictures of the Bigfoot that she took and that she also claimed was interdimensional. If you want to see the pictures, they're at about 60% of the way through Incredible Bigfoot 3. So you got to see it, man, because it's the best picture of a Bigfoot a lot of people have ever seen. People commented, that's the best picture I ever seen. And it gave me chills, man. It was so good.
I've heard that if you shoot at them, they go disappear in a flash of light.
A man on a horse said he had a 30-30 on a trail. He shot at it, and it flashed and was gone.
And it was gone.
Yeah.
Now, a 30-30 isn't the biggest caliber. I shot at an elk once with a 30-30, and it was gone, too, just because it didn't stop it.
You want an elephant gun, what you want.
Yeah. The elephant gun.
All right, I have a story for you.
Okay.
From Walla, Washington, watershed.
Okay.
The game warden with his horse. No one else allowed in there. No trash is to be taken in there. Correct? It's for the watershed for Walla, Washington.
That's what by the gorge there?
Yeah.
No, not by the gorge. This is like 30 miles away from the gorge.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Game warden saw it, heard it. He come out of there scared.
Yeah.
They fired him. They fired this guy.
They fired him.
He went and got evidence of it going downhill off of a road that he was driving on that went right into the watershed.
Wow, and how
and
did
then
you
they had
hear
to
this
rehire
story?
him back because he had footage of it.
And how did you hear this story?
Well, good friends of mine from Oregon knew the game warden.
The good friends knew the game warden?
Yes.
Yeah, it was all over the news because the footprints were, and they were sunk into the ground, not mud. I mean, they were deep.
I go down to Walla Walla to get cherries and stuff.
We had a farm. We had a store.
Huh. Nice.
Yakima, yeah.
My dad had a grocery store.
He did.
Yes. Boise, Idaho. Living right in the middle of Boise, Idaho. My wife, we have this big balloon pool, you know, the ones that you fill with water. And she heard this big splash one night. She said it went whoosh right out onto the pavement, because that's where we had it.
So the water went out and the Bigfoot print was there.
Yeah, right.
What do you reckon he was doing?
Looking for food to eat. Well, you know, if they can get around without being seen, and I have this neighbor in front of me say, thought I was crazy. You're not going to see him, dude. My kids went out the next day. There was a big footprint on the pool and hair. Okay, we had this, somebody thought raccoons did this to our eave of our house, but how are raccoons going to get on our house, go underneath the eave, and rip the whole thing down where there's bird nests for eggs? And there was a print.
In Boise?
Yes, there was a print this big.
In your backyard?
No, it was in the front yard in the moss. I couldn't get a picture of it. It was just.
That is something else.
I had the hair for a long time. I was going to send it to that professor in Idaho.
You had the hair, and you were going to send it to Jeff Meldrum there at the Sasquatch Research.
Guy in Pocatello, Idaho, yes.
But you don't have the hair anymore?
No.
What happened to it?
I lost it.
You lost the hair.
I had to move.
The guy had the only living remain of Bigfoot, and he lost it.
Could be.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Tell me what you saw, where you stayed at Catherine Albertson's Park. What you heard.
Cougars. It sounded like a woman screaming and a monkey and a wolf at the same time. And wood knocks.
And wood knocks. All of these things
This is
are
all
very
right in the middle
common.
of Boise, Idaho. It is.
Right in Boise. I've been to
Catherine
Boise.
Albertson's.
I'm a big fan of the Boise football team. So.
Catherine Albertson's.
Yeah, me too.
You want my name first, Millette?
Oh, sure.
My name's Raymond Gately, formerly of Ormond Beach, Florida. Tomoka State Park back in 1978 time frame. Myself and my friend Randy, with our girlfriends, were out there. We had gone crabbing. We were coming out and we smelled this horrendous smell, which is the smell of the skunk ape. And I turned around and you get tremendously scared when that thing's around and you just want to run. And Randy and his girlfriend ran off. I grabbed from my .357 Magnum and started to aim at it where it was in the woods. And she grabbed my arm and said, "No, don't do that." So we went back to the car. We were back there guzzling beers down, trying to calm down. And we drove off. And so many sightings happened back in the 70s that if you look on your Google, you'll see you can't get in there anymore. That was the best crab in Volusia County. Florida, you can't get in there anymore because of the people sighting the skunk ape, Bigfoot in Florida.
Many times when I come across what I feel is a genuine sighting, I Google the area and come across similar sightings in the same time frame. In this Ormond Beach sighting, the gentleman was being taken by a realtor, and just before 2 in the afternoon, they saw a skunk ape walk across the road. It was on all fours, and then it became erect.
So one of the first incidents that I had heard of was a good friend of mine in high school. He and his sister had several incidents of I guess in Alabama we probably refer to them as skunk apes more than anything else, but they called it the walking yield sign, like a highway yield sign, the upside down red triangle. And they said that the hair around its face was like that. And so in that same area, we had rock throwing events. There were probably at least a dozen different people.
What specific little town is this?
Okay, this is just outside of Auburn, Alabama.
And it gets rural real fast.
Yeah, it gets rural real fast. And we kind of live on the edge. A lot of forest, pine forest, and some hardwood forest in that area. So a lot of rock throwing events in our area.
Was anybody hurt or?
No. Nobody would ever get hit by a rock.
Yeah.
You could be walking down the street and a rock would come out of the woods and like land on the road beside you. We never could. It was rocks coming out of the woods most of the times, and we'd never see anything.
So how big was the yield sign?
Well, they said
skunk
that.
ape?
Okay, so when they said that it would like stand behind the rabbit pen, it was probably 7 foot.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and that's how they described it. You know, it was kind of like looking up at the sign on the side of the highway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool, Billy, because I've interviewed 28 people now that have actually had an eyewitness Bigfoot experience. And in many of those situations, there was rock throwing. And I originally became interested because of a rock throwing incident in my life that happened in a canoe trip in a very remote island. I couldn't figure out anything other than a Bigfoot that could have created this ginormous splash of the rock.
Yeah.
Please subscribe to these adventure-filled videos so that you don't miss any. Turn on the notifications and share these with your friends. Well, this is Debbie Paul, and she saw Bigfoot out around Post Creek on the Flathead Reservation.
He was eating apples off of an apple tree. The dogs woke me up in the middle of the night, and I looked out and I saw this gray big thing by the apple tree. He was eating from the top of the apple tree.
He was eating from the top of the apple tree. How tall is the apple tree?
They're about 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall.
Was he taller than the apple tree?
Yep.
By how much?
I'd say about 2 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, and the dogs are bugging him, and he wouldn't even bother him. He'd just swat his hands.
Just swat his hands at the dogs? Was it about 3 a.m.?
No, it was about 1 in the morning, and we have a big area light, so I was able to see him pretty good.
From the light?
Yeah, our yard's pretty well lit, and I beat up a bear before too.
You beat up a bear?
Yeah.
How did you beat him up?
Okay, he come to my yard. I had a big deck then, and he came in and somebody left the dog food on a chair on the deck, and he was reaching over the deck eating the dog food with his hand, and I went over there and hit him in the head with a shoe.
With a shoe?
He ran down the hill. Then I took my other shoe off and I hit him again.
Now, was there any sign of tracks
No,
after the Bigfoot?
No, because it was the grass, you know.
Oh, yeah, the turf.
It was springtime, yeah.
Nice lawn. It was on your lawn.
Yeah.
Could you tell what color it was?
He was just dark colored. Yeah, and I tried to wake my husband up, but he wouldn't wake up.
Did it look like it had really exceptionally long arms? Or
no, he just had looked like a regular human, but hairy.
Like a big hairy human, huh?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing.
And I thought it was my kids because they have this gorilla suit, and they're always scaring people out there, but it wasn't them.
How do you know it wasn't them?
Because I went to their room and checked, and they were sleeping.
Oh, were the dogs pretty riled up for an hour or two?
they were riled up good.
But Bigfoot, he didn't care about the dogs. What town is that closest to?
It's between St. Ignatius and Ronan, right up against the mountains.
Right up against those beautiful Mission Mountains?
Yep.
That's a beautiful area, one of the most beautiful areas of Montana.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your sharing the story. And then she said, what is it, your daughter-in-law?
No, her great niece.
And then she said her great niece, just a couple blocks away, woke up and she felt kind of frozen and paralyzed in her sleep almost. Was it because of fear?
I don't know. She just said that she felt like that. Something was looking at her and she couldn't move.
And then she looked and it was Bigfoot looking in
the window at her.
That was my 37th testimony that I've taken. The Nez Perce were famous for horsemanship, and this individual, if you could give us your name and explain that interdimensional quality to us.
So my name is Tauta Berju, and in like most native cultures, we are taught oral history by stories passed down generation after generation. In the Asteahe, Sakatpanim Sao Sao, Bigfoot lives in both worlds, as we talk about. That's why they'll never catch one, never have one, and it disappears like that, because he lives in both worlds. He has that power, that medicine.
Oh, the name.
Yeah, Asteahe or Sakatpanim Sao Sao. But also, I have traveled many places in Indian country, and I gravitate towards people that speak the languages of their people. And everywhere I've gone, they have a name for him in their language. So it's not coincidence.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I have noticed, and you may have noticed also, that a disproportionate number of my interviews come from Native American people. Why is that? Number one, it's culturally accepted and venerated in their culture. And they think you're cool if you saw one as a Native person. They think you're crazy if you saw one as a Caucasian. The second reason is the Native American reservations tend to be in areas that are a little more secluded and less peopled. And the Bigfoot like to stay away from the crowds. And number three, because some of the highest Sasquatch concentration of population is on or near the Blackfeet reservation, and my store is 60 miles away, so I tend to get testimony from that region. And then you had a situation where the Bigfoot kicked your dog, huh?
Yeah, it was like about 3 in the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And we heard something running, and here it just kicked our dog and kept going.
Could you see it?
No, we couldn't see it because we had the curtains closed.
Oh, but you heard a running, a plod,
Yeah,
plod,
a
and
big
then a
old-
kick and the dog whining.
Yeah, and it wasn't on 4, it was on 2.
How do you know?
Because the way it was thumping. It was just
Did
thump.
you look for tracks the next day?
No. And then it did it, about
a week ago.
About a week ago.
Wow.
It
Yeah, but
ran
this
through
one seemed like a
again.
juvenile. It was lighter.
It was lighter.
Yeah.
And where do y'all live? Kind of in the...
Up there, they call it Sweet Pine, but they up there by Homagun Ridge
okay.
area. Yeah.
Interesting.
There's
Sounds like
nothing.
you've had a lot of experiences. Any others you'd like to mention?
Oh, that's quite a bit.
That one when we parked. You remember I was telling you to watch those bears? They were up in that little hill.
Oh yeah, and that thing peeked over those trees. It's kind of peeked over and it peeked over at us, and then it got back down, and it was.
When we would look away, and he'd look back over at us, and when we look at him, and then he'd duck back down.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was like he was
ducked down.
following the horses.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I'd like to thank you for watching. You know, a lot of these people don't just come by my store one time, but I see them year after year, and they're solid, credible people. Thanks for watching, everybody. Rock on, Bigfoot lives. Just last month, I had 2 people, one in Arizona, say, man, I came to your channel because of Bigfoot, but I am really growing as a Christian because of this channel. Pretty cool spot, isn't it?